you want to slam your desk. It has been 3 hours since you started the group project, and there are so many variables that are out of your reach. Are your mates going to actually do their work this time? Or even worse, are you alone again for a task that you needed 3 to 4 people to achieve? The frustration reaches its peak when you slowly realize that you won't be able to finish what you started. You won't be enough this time, and your efforts won't be able to compensate for your crippling isolation. You know what comes next all too well, a ramping crescendo of distress that would culminate in a miserable apology to an uncaring teacher. Perhaps you try to ease the process by emailing your teacher quite a few days before the deadline, or you try to risk it and after the presentation you go directly to the teacher and explain the circumstances that led to this absolute disaster. The presentation goes on, your soul slowly leaves your body, and when you finish this godly appointed labor, you're just left with one thing and one thing only: guilt. You're just an empty shell, rebrewing every single moment that led to this situation. And every answer to every question seems to be the same: talk to the people. After the guilt comes the shame. If you weren't like that, this kind of thing wouldn't have turned out the way it did. You are trapped in this vicious cycle. You don't know when it got this bad, but here you are. And now you feel like you need to act on it, or at least learn how to cope better. You're back home. Everything is silent again, peaceful. No one and nothing can reach you here. This is your comfort zone. It's far away from everything, and most importantly, everyone. Everyone? What if that was the root of the situation you find yourself in? As you sit there, some words start popping up in your head. You've been a lone wolf most of your life. Your solitude is your gateway. But it slowly starts to bother you. So is it really solitude? The consequences of your solitude and your lack of social interactions are really leading you to this type of situation, and now you're aware of it after this last experience. So what if it was loneliness all along? It can often feel like a heavy burden, preventing you from reaching out to more people and hindering your sense of deserving companionship. Paradoxically, you've become so accustomed to this situation that, as miserable as it may be, it's the only social scenario where you have full control over how you interact and maneuver it. You may say to yourself, I shouldn't be here, hiding myself during the supposedly best years of my life. If there is a moment in your life to try things, it's right now, ranging from doing bungee jumping to talking to a human being. And honestly, who could argue otherwise? Okay, you've successfully identified your problem, and now the hard part starts: dealing with it. You're starting to collect data. What are people my age saying and doing? So you turn to the only thing that a person born in the late 90s and early 2000s will do: go on the internet. And just like that, the first big trap has been unleashed, and you watch yourself enter a super vicious cycle. Your attention shifts from trying to find answers to your problem to comparing yourself with people who don't really have the same problems as you. Not in a healthy, self-affirmative and growth purpose type of way, of course, but more in a self-destructive and self-hate way. And just like that, the cycle continues. You're lonely, you hate the fact that you're lonely, you compare your situation to what it, quote unquote, should be, and you hate your state even more, and so on, and so on. And at that exact moment, you lost track. You are not searching for a solution anymore. And just when you thought things couldn't get worse, you just stepped into the second trap. The infamous eternal goings and comings between your social anxiety and loneliness. See it as a maximum tolerable pains. You feel lonely until a point where you can't take it anymore, and you decide that the pain is so unbearable that it tops your social anxiety. The more you go out and talk to other people, the less lonely you feel, until your social anxiety pops up again and you'll have to self-isolate yourself in order to find the balance that will never come. And now for the third trap, and possibly the deadliest, which is to think that anxiety is something that you can get rid of alone. If you are emotionally isolated, you're emotionally isolated. There is only you, and your goal is to be able to share things with other human beings. Here, the problem is way deeper because it's directly linked to a societal problem. All of us human beings are slowly growing apart. We glamorize solitude to a point where we don't put our trust in communities anymore. And to be honest, I get it, man. People are unpredictable, scary, and not trustworthy. And most of the time, they don't know how to communicate properly with one another. At least, if you're alone with yourself, you know exactly what you're thinking about, and you can't possibly twist that. You maybe tried to seek company multiple times, but still felt emotionally alone while staying with them. So let's talk about our relationship with each other. How do we perceive another human being, and how it can be our first barrier to getting out of loneliness. It usually starts by knowing yourself a bit better and knowing how far you're able to go for the other person, with some self-awareness here and there. Maybe you don't like making the first move in a conversation, or maybe things move too fast for you. There can be a multitude of things that may irritate you to the point where you'd just rather stay alone. The first thing to do here is to know yourself. Then it's time to set some boundaries. Why would you want to set boundaries if you're just trying to find people with whom you want to have a connection? It seems kinda counterintuitive. Are you sure that you don't want to sabotage us, Ali? No and no. In this matter, quality is way more important than quantity. You want to select the people with whom you want to spend time because your objective is to create a deep and important connection. If you don't set boundaries with most people, it will drain you and you won't really be available to give the best version of yourself to the people that truly matter. Now, for the most important part. In order to build an emotional connection with people, I hope you're aware that you actually need to talk to them. Communication takes a central part in this whole process. You don't want to force anything, but let's imagine that the boundaries are set, that you know what works and doesn't work with you, and that you refine the people that you want to talk to. Now it's time to actually talk to them and be open with them. These people that you carefully selected are supposed to be the people that you can trust and that you want to speak to. So go ahead and talk about the subjects that make you feel like yourself, and also listen to what their perspectives and visions on life are. Tight bonds will then be created. Finally, another excellent exercise is helping another person who is stuck in their own loneliness. Yes, you have your problems. And you want it to be fixed. Got it, sure. But if acts of service are good, then catharsis is great. Empathy is a powerful antidote to the pervasive ache of loneliness. When we open our hearts to understand the emotions and experiences of others, it creates a profound connection that alleviates our own feelings of isolation. Through empathy, we bridge the gap between solitude and companionship, as we recognize the shared human struggles that bind us together. It enables us to offer a comforting presence to those who are lonely, reassuring them that they are not alone in their emotions. Moreover, when we emphasize with others, they are more likely to reciprocate, forming a reciprocal cycle of support and empathy that combats isolation. Empathy fosters a sense of belonging, as it reinforces the idea that we are part of a larger compassionate community. In essence, empathy is the bond that soothes the wounds of loneliness, forging genuine connections that dispel the shadows of isolation and nurture our emotional well-being. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, social interaction, as in every other situation, is not a permanent thing. We tend to think that our actions and words have this unbearable weight and definitive consequences. No. The awful embarrassment of a sentence that you said in 2014 to that random dude isn't a turning point in your life. That embarrassing presentation isn't the end of the world. What's absolutely scary is feeling seen. And it's something really important to take into consideration because if I'm being honest, you will get hurt by people who didn't even feel 0.001% of what you put on the table. When talking to another human being in order to establish an interaction and create a bond, when you aren't used to doing it, you're vulnerable. You do your best to put your heart out, and honestly, there is a 99% chance that things will not go as well as you hope. And you may feel like it went horribly wrong because of how invested you are in the situation compared to the other person. In that position, it's easy to grasp conclusions like maybe they hate me, maybe I annoy them, maybe they ignore me, when often the answer is that they didn't hear you or they just didn't care. And that is hard to fathom because you cannot conceive of someone taking social interactions more lightly than yourself in that moment. But getting hurt isn't a reason to stop trying. You will feel terrible and you put that fault on yourself. But you just gotta remember that most people are not out to find a new best friend. And that's just how it is. I watched Ted Lasso recently and he said this sentence that I found really cool and applicable in this situation. Goldfish have a 10-second memory, so whenever you try to interact with someone else and you get hurt because of it, remind yourself, eventually that embarrassment will fade, and the only person that will still know it ever existed will be you. Also, don't torture yourself over it this time, but do better and know better. It may feel gut-shattering at that moment, but it honestly isn't. Social interactions are like that. It's a bit like playing a slot machine with unlimited credit. If you lose, just play again. No need to dramatize it. And the slot machine will not even remember at the end, so why should you? To wrap things up, you are perfectly capable of doing it. But honestly, no amount of preparation will be enough to tank reality. Being lonely is hard. It's like having a permanent cloud on your head that from time to time reminds you that it's here with a bit of thunder. People can and will be hell. But if you play your cards right, in the right amount of time, you will find great people that will feel like family. And you will be seen and appreciated for who you are. The most important part of the whole process is to not give up. This has been the 5th episode of Lost in Your 20s. My name is Ali, and I hope I'll see you soon. If you liked this podcast, don't forget to rate it and to follow me for more. Ali out.